Before the world crowned him the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley was once a small boy living in silence, fear, and suffocating poverty. Many people know Elvis as a dazzling icon, bright stages, signature hair, and a voice that shook generations. But far behind that light lies a long and shadowy story. The story of a boy named Elvis, raised among hardships the world never fully heard about. His childhood wasn't the joyful tale many musical legends share. Elvis's early years were marked by struggle, fear, loss, and vulnerability. These experiences shaped him into someone deeply sensitive, emotional, and full of empathy. Elvis was born on January 8, 1935 in Tupelo, Mississippi, a small town filled with poor families trying to survive the Great Depression. Even on the day he was born, Elvis faced his first tragedy. His twin brother, Jesse Garon Presley, was stillborn. Their small house was already filled with anxiety, and Jesse's death became a sign that Elvis's life would not be easy. His mother Gladys often said Elvis wasn't just a child, he was a blessing, a gift that helped fill a void of love she had lost. Yet from the beginning, that loss made Elvis feel like something inside him was incomplete. The Presley home was nothing more than a simple, nearly collapsing building surrounded by Mississippi's red clay soil. When it rained, water leaked through the walls. When the wind blew hard, the house creaked as if it would fall apart. It was in this fragile home that Elvis learned the meaning of poverty. Food was often scarce, and Vernon Presley took odd jobs to keep them afloat. Sometimes they only had cornbread to eat, sometimes reheated leftover rice. Yet despite these limitations, Gladys always tried to make their home feel warm, with smiles, hugs, and prayers whispered every night. Fear became part of Elvis's life from the beginning. He feared many things: losing his mother, having their home taken away, and a future that seemed too dark to imagine. When Vernon was imprisoned for a minor forgery case, Elvis and Gladys were pushed into their hardest days. Gladys cried almost every night, and young Elvis, still too small to understand, could only hold her. It was during these moments that Elvis learned how cruel the world could be, and how his mother's love was the only place where he felt safe. Moving from one house to another became normal for the Presleys. They never truly had a permanent place to live. When rent became impossible to pay, they packed up and moved again, sometimes to a smaller home, sometimes even more run down. Elvis grew up fearing that any day they might lose their home. At times, they relied on neighbors or relatives just to have a place to sleep. The neighborhood Elvis grew up in was harsh. Many poor children were fighting their own battles, and violence often became their way of communicating. Elvis frequently became the target of teasing because of his appearance and quiet nature. He was different, his hair neatly combed, his clothes worn, and he preferred listening to music rather than engaging in rough play. These differences made him easy to bully. Yet it was in these moments that Elvis discovered the world that would one day save him, the world of music. Young Elvis often heard gospel singing at church with his mother. Their small church was the only place where he felt safe. There, the harmonies of gospel filled the room like warmth he never felt at home. He listened with wide eyes, feeling each vibration of the music deep in his soul. Gospel became Elvis's first home, a place where he didn't have to be afraid. Aside from gospel, Elvis was captivated by blues music played in poor black neighborhoods near his home. He often watched from a distance, listening to street musicians play with passion. Even as a young boy, he felt something powerful, music that seemed to speak directly to him. Here, the foundation of Elvis's musical identity was forming, a blend of gospel, blues, and country, all born from poverty-stricken environments where creativity thrived despite hardship. But life remained difficult. When the Presleys moved to Memphis hoping for a better future, poverty followed them. They lived in low-income housing surrounded by other struggling families. Elvis became a quiet boy who kept to himself, often carrying his cheap guitar, the one his mother bought because they couldn't afford a bicycle. That guitar became his escape from the pressures of the world. At school, Elvis was still seen as strange. His unique hairstyle, simple clothes, and shy behavior made him stand out in the wrong ways. But he kept singing, even if only in the small bathroom at home or the backyard. Music was the only thing that made him feel valuable. Every strum of the guitar seemed to erase his fears. Every note temporarily lifted him out of poverty. Gladys was the most influential person in his life. She encouraged him at every step. On dark nights, when the electricity was cut off because they couldn't pay the bills, she would hold Elvis and say, "Son, you're special. One day the world will know it." Elvis didn't fully understand, but her words calmed him, like she was lighting a small candle in a pitch-black room. As Elvis grew older, music became more than escape. It became hope. He took part-time jobs, bought secondhand clothes, and occasionally performed at school events, even though his voice still needed work. People mocked his dreams. "What can a poor boy from nowhere become?" they said. But Elvis didn't give up. He kept trying even though he was haunted by fear. Fear of failing, fear of disappointing his mother, and fear that the world might never hear him. At one point, music became his only way out of poverty. Elvis knew this. Every time he strummed his guitar, he felt like he was opening a small door to a brighter future, one where he wasn't just a poor boy from Mississippi, a future where his mother wouldn't have to cry anymore. But the road to his dreams was long and full of rejection. When Elvis tried to audition at local labels, many turned him down. They said he didn't have the right talent, the right look, or the right style. Each rejection felt like a blow. He would walk home with his head down, feeling like he had failed himself and his mother. Yet again, Gladys became his source of strength. "Try again, son. Your voice has something no one else has." Gladys's love and unwavering faith kept Elvis moving forward. Her encouragement became the light he needed in moments of darkness. They were poor, but her love for Elvis was richer than anything in the world. No one could have predicted that this shy, skinny, bullied boy would one day change music forever. The world didn't know that behind the glamorous lights, he carried wounds from his childhood, wounds that shaped his emotional voice and made each song feel like a confession. The world saw the result, but not the long journey of fear and poverty that sculpted him. And when Elvis finally stood inside the small Sun record studio and sang from the depths of his soul, the world shifted. His voice, his courage, and his raw energy broke the boundaries that had once trapped him. All the fears of his childhood, the hunger, the loss, the tears of his mother, they all transformed into power within his music, bursting into a sound the world had never heard before. But even in success, Elvis never forgot where he came from. He remembered the fragile house in Tupelo, the nights filled with fear, and the sacrifices of his mother. Elvis became a legend not just because of his music, but because of his heart. A heart shaped by fear, refined by poverty, and strengthened by love. This is the story of a poor boy who learned to turn fear into courage, scarcity into strength, and wounds into legend. Before he became a king, Elvis was a child living in uncertainty, and that uncertainty formed the soul the world came to know. This story isn't just about music, it's about struggle, love, and the strength to keep walking even when the future seems dark. From a fragile home in Mississippi to the greatest stages in the world, Elvis's journey proves that sometimes the brightest stars come from the darkest places. Fear and poverty were not the end, they were simply the beginning of something greater. Elvis Presley is living proof that a poor, frightened boy can rise, shine, and change history forever.